So this week we know it's Parsha Chayei Sarah. And as I was looking at this, I saw three sections that we could talk about, maybe in that order. These are stories about what's going on with the people in the story, with Sarah and Elijah and Abraham. But I saw that the sages appreciated every word of the Torah. And in these stories, there are a lot of different words and things that we can learn from. So the three things I've seen was Sarah died, and Abraham goes through this elaborate ordeal just to buy a gravesite. And then we learn how Abraham sent out his servant to find a wife for his son. And it's one of the longest conversations in the Torah, over 60 verses, just about this transaction, this discussion. And then the third part of this parsha, we learn that Abraham remarries, he has sons, he sends his sons off, he dies, and he's buried by Isaac and Ishmael. So to start with, I'd like to turn to chapter 23, verse 1. It says, Sarah's lifetime was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, the years of Sarah's life. And Sarah died. And there's a lot of commentary about how its years are after everyone, 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. And we see some commentators say that she was 100 years old, but like she was as innocent as a 20-year-old, and as a 20-year-old, as innocent as a 7-year-old. Rashi goes on to say that all the ages of Sarah's life, all the 127 years, were equal. She was equally good and righteous in every situation in her life. Whether the trials, the tribulations that she went through, being taken away by Pharaoh, all these other situations, she never gave up, and she was true, and she was just steadfast in everything she did. All of her life was equal. I really like that thought. But what, it says, I've heard that when Sarah heard Isaac was going to be sacrificed, that she passed away. And a lot of times I've heard that it's like she heard it and she maybe had a heart attack or something happened and she died. I came across something I thought was kind of interesting, that she died because she knew that her mission was completed, that she was finished with what she was supposed to do. We know Sarah was a prophetess, even a greater prophetess than Abraham was a prophet. As she could see, Abraham knew what his cause was. Sarah had an insight into what people were and how to judge people. And that's why he was told to listen to her. And my thinking on this was, and the commentary thought, that she knew she had raised a son who was going to walk in the footsteps of her and Abraham. She raised a son who was willing to be sacrificed for Judaism. And she raised a son that was not going to compromise, was going to carry the covenant to the next generation. And I like the idea that she knew her time was through, her time was over. The parsha before this, Abraham learns that Rebecca is born. And then we learn Sarah dies. And the sages teach that a righteous person doesn't die unless another righteous person is born. And I think this really talks a lot about Sarah. Matter of fact, in this parsha, as I was reading my notes over, there's three women that really stuck out to me in this parsha. One here was Sarah, one will be Rebecca, and another one is kind of a little more hidden, but she's prominent also. So we see Sarah died, and then we see the back and forth about the cave. How much is he going to pay for it? Is he going to pay for it? All this. So I'd like to open up for discussion right now, just on this part. If anyone has anything to say, disagree with what I said, has something to add, what you might have learned from this section of the parsha.
Okay, can I speak?
Sure.
if you go back to chapter 11 in Genesis, and you go back to the lineage of our characters, I found it fascinating when going back through in verse 29 in chapter 11. It goes by saying, and Avram and Nahor took themselves wives. Um, his native land is Ur Kasdim. But anyway, the name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and a daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. Iscah is Sarah, if I'm correct. That would make her the sister of Lot, or Lot, whichever way you want to put it. And as I was going through this, if I'm understanding correctly some of the Midrashic writings I'm reading, Ishka speaks of being a prophetess, where Sarah speaks of her barrenness. And so eventually her name is rechanged. She's given a third name, which is Sarah, which gives her the opportunities. I I think it says something about why people change their names. This is a strange story, but when I went to church, we had a friend who had a dog, and he named his dog Nimrod. His dog got sick, and I said to Steve, why don't you change the name of the dog? So he changed the name of the dog to Samson. 2 days later, Samson was running around the backyard, absolutely changed. In other words, a change of name seemed to make a difference in the way he behaved and the way he was perceived. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Anyone else?
I never thought of it, Mike, before that she died because her mission was completed.
Yeah.
That puts a whole other, it takes some of the sadness away that she had completed what she came to do, and she died. And what better time to do that than when you have completed why you were here? I'm glad you brought that out. I'd not heard that before.
Thank you. But one thing I noticed about Ephron, that in this story about selling this burial plot, that his name is mentioned 8 times. 7 times it's spelled in full. 1 time it's spelled defectively. When the money, the shekels, the 400 pieces, were weighed out to Ephron. And the gematria on that is 400. And rabbis say, with an evil eye. And so it really says something about Ephron and his, go ahead, take the cave, take the burial site. What's this between you and me? And the Torah is really, it's teaching us something about a person's character. I kind of like that idea, just to see that about him, what kind of person he was. All right. Let's go on with the second person that I picked up was Rebecca. The chapter 24, verse 14. And let it be that drink, and I will even water your camels. Her will you have chosen for your servant Isaac, and may I know through her that you have done kindness for my master. So this was interesting that he's looking at her character, and he's looking at the attribute of kindness, of showing kindness to a stranger, working hard to do something good for someone else. He wasn't looking for, is she an idolater? You know, he didn't care as much, because we've said, I think Rabbi Roby said, that with belief systems, they're more malleable, they can change. But bad internal habits, ingrained bad choices are a lot harder to get rid of than simple beliefs. And one thing he didn't ask either, he said, I guess he could have went to the site and said, is anybody related to Nacon? And is anyone related to Abraham's family? But he didn't. He brought up, he really wanted this characteristic of kindness, of giving, of generosity. To him, that spoke more than anything else of the mate that he was trying to get for Isaac. And then he finds her. We know she comes to the well. And in verse 21, we get an insight of what he was seeing at the well. We could almost imagine what he was seeing. He says, and the man was astonished. So he saw this girl, this young girl, bringing, not just like, here's some water. I've got to go. I've got a place to be. I got to get my hair done. So no, not anything wrong with getting your hair done, but that she was not only giving him water, she was able to feed the water the camels. And he was just amazed and astonished at this young girl that would do this kind of thing. And you can kind of see that she's going back and forth. I don't know how many gallons of water it takes to satisfy a camel, but there's 10 of them. And there's probably 10 men on those camels. So she watered it all, and he's just sitting back in astonishment. Then it says, reflecting silently. Shows me that he could have stopped her at any given time. Said, enough, you did enough. It's good. You watered a bunch. You don't need to do any more. But he was so mesmerized by this young girl and what her character was at this young age that he didn't even try to stop her. And then he's saying, to know whether Hashem has made my journey, to know about her. And the question was, who taught her to be this kind? Who taught Rebecca to be this kind? Wasn't that society? That's for sure. They were idol worshipers, and they weren't people that you could really trust. It wasn't her family. Her father was going to try to poison Eliezer at one point. It wasn't her brother. All he did was take some idols out of a house, and then he ran, not to help anybody, but he ran to see this man who was giving golden gifts away. So who did she learn this from? And she learned it from Hashem. She was taught by God these qualities, living in the midst of this group, living in the midst of this family. She taught and she put into practice on her own these qualities of goodness. And that's why he says, and then if I see this, then I will know. She's got these qualities, I will know something about her. And she's not a matriarch for no reason. This is something incredible in this young girl's life that we will see mature as she matures. Steve, question?
One of the things that I'm now looking back trying to find for sure, but my understanding was that actually she was only 3 years old. That in fact, she was born the day that they offered Isaac on the fire. And so it's 3 days or 3 years later that she's coming. That in the course of the time in watering the camels, by the way, the camels take up to 10 gallons of water each. So she's now provided 100 gallons of water, not counting what she would have given to the people. But she had to raise it from a well to put it into a trough. But the problem was, or the miracle was, that the water rose up into the well high enough that all she had to do was tip the bucket over and continually fill the pail. But I thought that was fascinating. And I'd ask Rabbi Avner, is that a true story or am I making that up?
Well, it's a midrash. It's not a matter of truth. But you don't ask midrash to face reality. Midrash can concoct all kind of stories, depending when what area in history it was proposed, to whom he was talking, this particular rabbi, what he tried to accomplish. So that's the way to answer those midrashim. Obviously, the midrash came to answer or to address a certain question that the rabbi had on his mind, but we don't have to take it really literally. While I'm speaking, I think I was impressed by Mike's presentation and the question that he rose. And shortly I will answer that. We have a guideline how to address the book of Genesis. The guideline is set by Book of Yetzirah that says Sefer, Sefer, Sefer. There are 3 stories in the book of Genesis. The story that you're dealing now, the simple text, and what you're doing, you read the text, you raise all kind of questions, and the text is understood, and you can now discuss where is Syria, where is Abraham, that's okay. All these questions are okay. The simple explanation, the simple reading of the text, that's one sefer, one story. And there is another story, only in Book of Genesis, that you need the guideline from Book of Yetzirah, that you need to look for this particular attribute of Hashem that's hovering here. And of course, obviously, we are dealing with chesed, charity, compassion. And indeed, Abraham, Rebecca does a lot of chesed, as opposed to Abraham. Now, what's the difference, in short? Both of them do chesed, but Abraham does it because he believes in Hashem. He had unconditional love and charity to anyone. He was even ready to pray for Sodom and Gomorrah. Complete, but compassion, but not because he was a good man, but because he followed the midat chesed. He believed Hashem as a chesed, as an attribute of chesed, and he clung to Hashem. This is Abraham. Rebecca here is completely different. The Torah spends so much time on her, unbelievable, more than on any other one. But Rebecca, as Mike already raised the question, she does so much beautiful charitable thing. I don't know if she was 3 years old or older, but obviously she does things that above any other girl. She goes out of her way. She waters the people, the camels, and everyone. She's full of compassion. Why? She was raised in idolatry. And her brother Laban is an arch cheater. Her father is Bethuel used to molest virgins. She is a rose among the thorns. So, as the Midrash said. So, how did she get the knowledge of doing this charity? She had a good heart. Wow. That's completely different from Abraham. She does charitable way. She clings to Hashem because she had a good heart. So Abraham does it because he is following Hashem. She does it from their heart. Then the next step will be Jacob will do charitable way as a law. We'll talk about it later in other Parshat. So again, if I go back to Sefer Yetzirah, so we now understand that the whole section here, and as we go with the book of Genesis, along the attribute, and now we are at the attribute of Chesed. Later on, with Isaac, will go with the Gevurah, and then the other attributes, Malchut. So the book of Genesis take you one by one along with the attribute. So the attributes are hovering here, are drawn here over the head of mankind. By us doing chesed, we draw Hashem leadership on us in this particular way. That's the idea. So we spoke about two stories. Sefer Yetzirah said third story. Thirdly, Sefer. So we have the regular story. We already put on it the attribute of mercy, but then come something for Bnei Noah, because the third story, Sefer HaBahir, I believe said, it's the commandment. And what is the hidden commandment here? Is the commandment of what Abraham is dealing with. Commandment number 4. You call it Gezer, Noah, but it's not Gezer. It's ownership. It's a recognition of Hashem as owner. And number 4, charity. When Abraham believed that when he did charity, he actually dispensed things that belong to Hashem. So the ownership, Gezer. So this allows you, deepen your understanding of commandment number 4. So here again, the idea is, yes, what you're doing is right. First of all, you read a story. But when the book of Genesis, especially for Bnei Noah, it's important to remember that the Torah moved here from one commandment to another, as I've done in my classes for the last 2 years, and exactly the same fashion, each time, each section also draw, as Sfat Emet says, it draws the heavenly guidance on you in this particular fashion. So when Mashiach will come, for instance, he will teach mankind to keep the 7 commandments, not because he want nice communities. He would like mankind to draw the heavenly guidance, providence, blessing on mankind. So by doing the 7 commandments, there is a mystical dimension to it, beside the plain text. So that's in fact, you cannot after you hear that, once you hear that, you will never read the book of Genesis again in the same fashion. You just heighten your appreciation what the book is all about and how it relates to you as the Noah, and what kind of message it gives. It was written on purpose. The book was written on purpose. That's the theology. There is a story, there is a book, and there is a storyteller. Sefer. There is a story to tell, there is a book to write, and there is a storyteller. Who is a storyteller? It is Hashem. Hashem telling the story to Moses, to write it down, so we can understand that this particular book should be read in 3 levels.